Hello everyone, and welcome back to another sketchbook session. I'm going to be trying out these paint markers Arrtx kindly sent me, so come along with me while I fill a spread in my sketchbook. These are their 48 strong coverage acrylic paint markers. They have a 3mm tip, which is slightly bigger than Posca's usual pens. They also have a 36 set with pretty similar colors to these. Each marker has a number assigned to it and the instructions on how to activate them on the side. The colors are both bright and pastel, which is great for a variety of artwork. I will say though, as I was working with them, I did feel like they were more on the vibrant side of the pastel, but that's to be expected for these. They're not supposed to be like the pastel alcohol markers I tried before. First thing I did was swatch them, which took me a minute because each pen you have to shake and press down before the paint starts coming out of the marker. You can already see the paint flowing down to the tip even just from shaking, so overall I felt like it was a lot easier to get them to work than paint markers I used before. The colors were also in order in the box this time around, which I really appreciated because last time I had to take all of the markers out of the box and then reorganize them, but this time I didn't have to do that because everything was in order. So it started out from the white, silver, and the gold, and then it transitioned into the colors of the rainbow, and then there's also these two neon colors, which I don't know if I'm ever going to use. Honestly, it's a nice addition, and it's pretty fitting for these acrylic markers to have two brighter colors. Even though the colors in the box were in order, I still should have put the cap number under my swatches because some of the caps looked very similar and I had to keep trying them on the paper as I was painting just to see which color it was, because some of the pinks and the purples look very similar to each other, but obviously when you're swatching them it looks different, but the caps are super close to each other, so I probably should have put the numbers down just so it would have been a little bit easier for me to distinguish them from each other. I really like the color range of these. I especially like the different types of grains, which I ended up using for this spread a lot. I have been wanting to collect more paint markers for a while now, which I know I mentioned in my previous video that I tend to not buy many art supplies. I don't know if it's because I work digitally on a more frequent basis, so I don't really need any fancy new art supplies, and even if I do buy art supplies, it's just to refill my inks for my Inktober drawings. So yeah, I don't know if it's because I'm a digital artist or if I just don't like the price tags on certain art supplies, but it always seems like such a big expense to get quality art supplies, which is why I'm very grateful to get opportunities like these where I can try out different art supplies. Before I jump into talking about the sketchbook spread, I want to give some thoughts on these markers. Overall, it was a fun experience to work with them. I liked how pigmented they were. None of them seemed to be dry, or whenever I felt like it started to become patchy, I could just reactivate it and paint would continue to flow very nicely. The packaging is also very pretty. I love the tile-like design on the markers, and the box has its own holding compartment, so you can just continue to store them in the packaging they came in. My only issue with these was that some of the markers were super watery. I really had to shake it to mix up the pigment in the marker, and then they came out runny because there was too much paint on the tip. This resulted in creating a huge mess while working. Both my desk and my hands were covered in the paint by the end of it. I also stopped putting the cap at the end of the marker because the paint would transfer and continue to spill everywhere. You also have to keep reactivating the marker every time you use it, even if you just used it 5 minutes prior, because the paint would just start settling and would come out as a completely different color. Under my swatch, I kept using the markers to reactivate them and just again checking what color I was using, and there was this color that I used for the bunny's fur, and when I first started using it, it came out completely yellow, but it was supposed to be more of this fleshy tone, and that's when I realized that the paint was already starting to settle in the marker, so I had to like do the whole like shaking and pressing it down just so the color would look exactly like how I originally swatched it. It's important that you keep reactivating these markers or your colors are just gonna look a little bit wacky, which it did end up looking a little more yellow for the fur, which is not a huge problem. It's just obviously I was going for a different color, so that's definitely something to keep in mind. I think it's just the nature of this specific art supply because all other paint markers do this too, so I'm not really blaming this set. Also, I think it was partially my fault too because I was very impatient and I would not wait for the paint to dry and would just put my hand on areas that were still wet. I just keep flip-flopping between areas on the piece because I get excited about one part and then I want to instantly work on another area. It's honestly a skill issue on my part more than anything. So yeah, it was just a bit messy, which is not like a huge deal. I just wish these would have been more consistent on terms of like the runniness of the paint and also like the color of it. I wish the paint wouldn't settle so quickly in the marker. For the spread, I decided to do a little bit of mix of everything just so I could see how the markers would perform. I was also having a bit of a trouble coming up with things to draw. I don't know if it's due to art block or just being burnt out from work, but finding inspiration has been difficult and even feels like a chore sometimes. Like, I spend countless hours scrolling on Instagram and Pinterest to get myself to create, but then just end up doom scrolling and not getting anything done. I also feel this high pressure whenever I prep for a video because I know I have to spend multiple hours drawing, filming, and editing this video. So I want it to be quality work that I am proud of putting out. And because of these high expectations, one can be stuck in this vicious cycle of not creating because you want everything to be perfect. These are the moments when I find myself just embracing the silly and messy side of my art. Like, I have to tell myself that not everything has to be serious or a masterpiece to be a quote-unquote quality work. I can draw silly little animals and it would still resonate with others. It's also okay to recycle art. Like, if you don't know what to draw, take elements of old art or even recent art and use them again. Not everything has to be this unique and never before seen piece, especially considering that everything is inspired from somewhere. So technically we are not really creating like one-of-a-kind pieces. Like, we're taking inspiration from like old masters or from each other. So it really is okay to just take inspiration from anywhere you can find it. And taking inspiration from my own art is one of the best ways to see how much I improved as an artist. Like, you know those old artworks that you made when you had this carefree childhood wonder in you and all your ideas just spilled on the paper, but you didn't quite have the skills yet? Well, now you have those skills. So why shouldn't you take those ideas and recreate them? Also, with this fast-paced social media content creation, it's hard to keep up with the algorithm. So why make it even harder for yourself by adding all these stupid expectations? Life is too short. Make art that's fun, silly, and enjoyable. You never know. Maybe it's going to be your followers' favorite, or it will spark new ideas for you. At the end of the day, you're making art for you, nobody else. You're doing it because you like it. So if silly little animals is what makes you happy and boosts your creativity, then do that. I am definitely still battling with perfectionism, and it's something I'm going to have to learn to let go of, but small steps like this page, for example, is very helpful. I think it's also important when you're trying out new materials or just materials that you're not super comfortable with to just kind of do something very simple or do something that you're very comfortable doing, like comfortable drawing. I don't think it's necessary for you to go out of your comfort zone by what you're drawing when you're trying all of these new things, because you're just making it hard on yourself by not only having to use materials that you have never used before, but also trying to push yourself to draw something that you're not comfortable with. So I definitely think making simple artworks and just, silly art is also just as important as making anything serious, like more detailed painted pieces, or for example, I make these like artworks that have very intricate borders, and I usually try to put those aside for artworks that I have time to plan them, or I am in a very good creative mood, because I know if I am not in that mindset, it's just not going to look right, and I'm just going to suffer through the whole thing. And again, that's not the point of art making. The point of art making is so you enjoy yourself, you're having a fun time, and you don't just force yourself to do it. So there's a lot of ways for you to like battle these art blocks, if you do have them, which I think majority of people who are creatives have art blocks. And sometimes it's even better to just like step aside from art and just like enjoy small things. Like, for example, I have been doing crocheting these days, which is something completely different from my art practice. I think finding other things to do while you're regaining your creative mindset is also like a great way to battle art block, and just overall like just letting yourself be loose. Don't focus on the outcome of the artwork, just focus on yourself enjoying the creative process. So going off from this, I try not to spend too much time on figuring something amazing to put on page. I just drew what came to my mind, which was this rabbit character that I designed for a keychain and some tulips around her. And again, this is something that I already had lying around. Like, this sketch was already done for the rabbit. I just had to create this scene around her, and it wouldn't take me too long, and it's still something that I have never drawn before, but technically I'm taking an element from somewhere else. And for the other side, I did a blueberry plant and a little landscape that I both found on Pinterest. I've been meaning to do this landscape for a while now, actually. I just really love the shadows and the color, which ended up working out perfectly with these markers. I'm also glad I didn't make it super complicated, because the markers tips were on the bigger side, so creating details would have been difficult. This is another thing with these, that blocking things out or working bigger is more suited for these markers overall. Thankfully, this sketchbook is on the larger side, so it did work out for a couple of sketches perfectly. I still lined the left side because I wanted some more details, but the other side definitely showcases that these markers don't necessarily need any liners or pencils. So again, overall, I very much enjoyed working with these markers, even with their messiness, so I would recommend them if you're looking for cheaper paint markers with wide range of colors. I'm also glad I was able to work on these sketches and kind of let myself focus on the materials rather than on the outcome of this spread, which in the end kind of turned out pretty slay in my opinion. Don't let your perfectionism get in the way of making your art. Just have fun and create whatever you like, be it silly or more serious work. Any art you make is going to push you forward in your artistic journey. That's it for the sketchbook spread though. Thank you so much for watching this video, and thank you for Arrtx for letting me try these paint markers. If you would like to get your own set, you can find them in the description below. Have fun drawing and don't forget to stretch and sit up straight. See you next time. Bye bye!